Welcome, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to have an opportunity to interview I think, one of Scotland's leading sports people, but also a very good friend of mine, Mr. Martin Perry. So, Martin, where are you joining us from today?
I am in sunny Dumbarton at the moment.
And it is sunny. It's been sunny all week. All these myths about Scotland and bad weather have all been proved to be untrue.
Thankfully.
So, Martin, we're here today talking about sport in Scotland, and about collaboration. So, as you know, collaboration is at the centre of what I do, and we've been fortunate to collaborate on a number of projects, and we'll hopefully discuss some of these during today. But for people that don't know you, Martin, could you introduce yourself by telling us a little bit about your story? How did you get here today?
No idea. I think I just rolled out of bed and I was here. But so I was born in Paisley. I was the youngest of four boys, and there was a bit of a shock when I was born. And it's not because I was devilishly handsome. It was because when I was born with only one complete limb, which is my right leg. So my right arm stops just before my wrist, and my left arm stops at the elbow joint. So no hands and only one leg. And so every day since I've been able to walk, I've had to use a prosthetic leg and prosthetics just to do everyday life and grow up and have fun with my brothers and just, cause absolute chaos along the way.
How many brothers do you have?
I've got three, so I'm the baby.
So, for those of us who don't face the challenges that you've got, it can be quite difficult for us to understand because, we would, what was it like? Were you, treated as almost like made of china as a child and carefully looked after because of the challenges that you had? Were those big brothers all there supporting and making sure you were looked after?
I mean, they were definitely supporting, but I don't know if they treated me like China. If anything, it was the exact opposite. And to be honest, I thank them for that. It's made me who I am today. There was never a moment of pity or feeling sorry for anyone in the family. They just treated me like the rest of the brothers, which I can imagine for outsiders looking in might have looked oddly terrifying. But that was just life for us growing up. They didn't care that I was a person with a disability. They just treated me like one of the brothers, and one of the earliest stories that my parents remember telling me about, when they brought me home. My brothers are a little bit older than me. They're 5, 7, and 9 years older than me, so they were, a decent age. They're all running around playing and having fun, and one of them had a skateboard in the house. So they thought when I came home as a newborn infant with only one limb, that it'd be a great idea to try and put me on the skateboard and roll me up and down the hallway. So they tell me that that's what love is, and I'm still not sure what side of the fence I sit on that. But that kind of gives you an insight into the life that we had growing up as children, because it was just fun and we just played, and there was no special treatment. I was just Martin.
Yeah, I think I think my brother, who's younger, would probably identify a bit with that.
Yeah, I think if it's not your family, you'd probably call it bullying.
No, it's okay in the family. So as you grew up, obviously everyone in Scotland a great interest in sports like football and rugby and everything. But what was the sports that took your passion and the journey you went on?
It was everything, because obviously my brothers, they would do everything. So I just did everything. But obviously growing up in the west of Scotland, it was mainly football. So that was our main sport. But I didn't see it as sport as a child. I just saw it as having fun. And I just saw it as a way to compete with my brothers. Four boys in one house is going to be incredibly competitive at the best of times.
Yeah.
Never mind trying to organise sport, So it brought out the best in us, and it also brought out the worst. But, it was mainly football for us, but I tried everything. And I found from a very early age that sport was such a leveler for me, and I think I had some natural advantages of growing up with my brothers, that I was able to compete physically, where I probably shouldn't have been able to. And I think that was just because they took no, special interest in my disability. If anything, they tried to use it to their advantage. They would chuck me in goals thinking, well, he's not going to save it with no hands. Yeah. And thankfully, I was able to prove them wrong.
Fantastic. So we're sitting here today, and we're just a few weeks away from finding out if you have been successful in qualifying for the Paralympics. Now, so from that wee laddie with the supported by your brothers to this position now is an incredible journey. So where did the interest in table tennis come from? Because again, a bit like handball, it's not a more prominent sport in Scotland. So how did you get into handball? And I have to ask, and I can ask you this as a good friend, like having been born without hands. To move towards table tennis sounds like quite a jump. So I think everyone watching this would love to hear how you made that journey.
I thought it was the obvious choice when you have no hands was to play the fastest racket sport you can find. Is that not the general consensus?
Well, you're talking to someone who's 6'5", so the natural thing was basketball.
Well, yeah. So I actually, believe it or not, my table tennis journey, as it were, started in high school playing rugby.
Yeah.
So my head of PE department asked me, do you want a couple of days off school? You're a big lad, you can come in the rugby sevens team and we'll go and have some fun. So yeah, of course, no brainer. A couple of days off school, get to run around with my mates. Brilliant. We ended up winning the local sevens championship, and we made the local paper. And someone from Scottish Disability Sports seen me in that article, in the photograph, and they were like, "Wow, this guy's competing able-bodied sevens rugby with obviously a massive disability. Let's see what else he can do." So they contacted the school, who in turn sort of fed that information back down to me, and I was invited to a summer camp ran by Scottish Disability Sport, where you got to try everything, absolutely every single sport you can imagine. And on the final day there was table tennis, and I was dreadful. I was absolutely dreadful, but I loved it. It was so much fun. It's a sport that I've never seen someone play and not have fun and not have a smile on their face. And that was the instant attraction for me, was that I was just having fun. And I never for a second thought, oh, this is going to be my job one day. It was just something that I enjoyed for an hour and then moved on to another sport. It was at the end of this camp that the table tennis coach came up to me, and he was like, I would love it if you came to my club. I think it could be really good for you. And I said, yeah. I said, yeah, because it was fun. And I played for a little bit, started slowly getting better, but I was just seeing it as this fun hobby. And then the London 2012 Paralympic Games came around, and I managed to go down at the team event matches and see Paralympics GB win 2 bronze medals that day, and I was blown away. I seen these absolute superhumans competing in front of thousands of people, captivating an audience, and I was like, this is what I want to do. This is pretty cool.
Brilliant.
And since coming home from London, I couldn't stop thinking about how I was going to train and how I was going to improve and what I was going to do. And in the space of 3 short years since the Paralympic Games, I was all of a sudden living and training alongside these athletes that I had just gawped at because I was so amazed by them. And then to have that transition to actually living with them and training with them, it was amazing. So I didn't ever think that table tennis was going to be my job, and then the Paralympics changed everything for me.
So it's wonderful because you describe there those key aspects. So that the supportive structure within Scotland, which are they came to you and said, "Hey, would you like to try these different sports?" You picked up that joy of table tennis. I have to say as well, you know that success that got you into the local paper. Someone would have contacted you, and you had the guts to say yes when they said, "Would you like to do that?" And I'm a great believer in encouraging people to say yes. And we'll come on to some of the things I've had you do. So, and then, but then that the hard work starts to get better, to train, to practice, to develop. And how do you, like athletes, I feel like very similarity with business leaders, and the fact that you've got to solely focus and commit to the hard work and the effort that's required to achieve success. How did you, over that period, as you were slowly getting better, and it slowly starts to develop from fun to being something more than that? Can you describe a little bit about your mindset, how you deal with that?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, it was tough just trying to train and compete at the local level. And this competitive edge that's been instilled in me since I was a child was starting to come out more and more. The longer that I played and the longer that I trained. As I said, coming back from London, I was transitioning out of high school into university, and I knew at that time that if I didn't put everything into sport right now, then I wouldn't have the choice later on in life. Just due to my disability, due to age, due to a lot of factors, it just wasn't going to happen. It had to be now or never. So I sacrificed some parts of my university life. I was, quite frankly, I was missing lectures and being late on essays because I was going to training camps down south in England. I was, traveling abroad to try and train and compete at a higher level, constantly pushing myself to get better. And it was something that people would always ask me about, what about your school? What about your education? What about this? And it was always the same. I had to have such a selfish approach to it and say, but I want to be an athlete, and you can't do that full time as well as something else. It's just, it's just not feasible. So I had to be incredibly selfish and sacrifice a lot just to train. And at this point in my career, I wasn't even very good, but I just knew it's what I wanted to be and what I wanted to pursue. And it made me make some really hard decisions. For example, moving away from home at 17, not just to live on my own, but to live 5 hours down south in England, away from all my family, away from all my friends, because I had to succeed. I had to give everything. And it was incredibly tough in the beginning, but it was something that just, I had no other choice. I had to be like these guys at the Paralympic Games.
And you have to deal with, as in any sport, you have to deal with these knockbacks. So there's the losing, but there's also the challenges to overcome. But you're doing this in a framework which we that don't carry the disabilities that you have just can't imagine it. No, I remember getting a text from you and going, how did he do that? and it's those kind of things. And how do you deal with that issue round about the knockbacks and when you don't get to achieve what you want to achieve?
I mean, with regards to the disability, it's something that I genuinely feel so fortunate to have. If I look back on the life that I've led and the travels that I've been on, the people that I've met, I really don't think that would have happened if I was born able-bodied. So I'm incredibly lucky to have been born with no hands and one leg. That brings me so much joy, knowing that where that's taken me in life. But the setbacks of losing, it's okay. Every athlete wants to win, but it's not going to happen. Every businessman wants to succeed and get the deals. Every artist wants to go and have a platinum record. It doesn't happen for everyone. And those setbacks, those failures, if you don't learn from them, if you don't find something that you can grow off of that, then that is where the failure becomes a failure. If you can use those setbacks to learn from it, to use it a bit more fire in the belly and progress a little bit and try and become a better version of you, that's the ultimate goal.
But it requires that. I see a lot of people who I see incredible potential in them, but getting them to take that risk, the risk to step forward where they may or may not be successful. So I see it a lot in public speaking. The large majority of people, would feel very uncomfortable about appearing on stage. But I'm going, well, come on to this Zoom call or come and do this interview. And they feel like I don't really want to do that. But because I might not come across well, or I may try and do this deal and it might go wrong, or I may work with someone and it proves to be the wrong person. But, at my age, I've kind of realized that that's the fun part of life. The fun part of life is getting over that. And actually, whether you win or not, in my world, is kind of irrelevant because it's the journey that's the fun part. But in what you're doing, it's statistically measured. Either you won that game or you didn't win that game. And if you win that game, you progress further towards your Olympic goal. And if you don't, you simply don't. I just imagine the pressure of that.
Yeah, I mean, it can be incredibly tough, because you're not just chasing a dream. It's actually a goal. It's a target. It's something that is very much within grasp. That means, the world to us as athletes. The Olympics, Paralympics, world championships, things like that. That's what we strive for. That's everything to us. And hopefully, as I said, in 7 weeks' time, when qualification comes around, then I can achieve that dream. But if I don't, then I have to learn from it. I have to see what mistakes I made, and it won't be mistakes in that 1 week tournament. It'll be mistakes over a 3-4 year period, that add up along the way. It's not just looking at the week before and going, well, that's what I did wrong and that's why I failed. It's not. You have to have that bigger picture, and people often think bigger picture as in looking forward. But as athletes, we actually have to look back the way as to see why we didn't get the results, because you can't say, oh, well, I didn't train hard enough, or I didn't do this or I didn't do that, because that's simply unacceptable. So you have to look at why you failed, and why you failed would have been what you did do, and how you could have done that better. And it's something that, as I said, when we think about looking at the bigger picture, we often look forward and we forget what we've done previously, and there's so much learning to be had.
And we're talking about collaboration today a lot, and I've discovered that collaboration gives me a competitive edge, and it's been a real eye opener for me in the last few years, particularly through this period of COVID. But when I look at athletes, you're in that unique position because you have to be the best at what you're doing as an athlete. That's what you're trying to do. But you have to collaborate with so many people around about you to provide you with the resources you're required to be the best. So how do you go about doing that? Because you've got to, you'll have to dedicate time to fundraising, for example, and getting support for that.
Exactly. And I think, that's often overlooked, especially in an individual sport. People think it's just you out there on your own. And I think actually in an individual sport, that couldn't be further from the truth. You rely on the team around you even more so than in a team sport, in my opinion. And so for me, if we talk about collaboration, that encompasses working with coaches, working with sports psychologists, nutritionists, physiotherapists, your teammates, because even as an individual sport, you have to train against someone, and all that encompasses collaboration. Going back to the fundraising, I need to raise money in order to just live, train, compete, and do what I do on a daily basis. That's a collaboration, whether it's a sponsorship, whether it's a paid event, that's a collaborative resource that I have to use every year just to do what I do. And without that, I wouldn't be playing table tennis. And, as I said, it's often overlooked in an individual sport. Team sports, you can actually have a bad performance and hide behind the team's success, and it'll look like you've done all right. Yeah. Whereas actually, if I have a bad performance, it only looks bad on me. But that's where I need to use my team. That's where I use my coaches, my teammates, my psychologist, my physiotherapist, my sponsors, my network around me, friends, family. Who can I lean on for support, and how are we going to get through it together as a team? And that's collaboration.
And how do you go about on the funding side of it? Because obviously in all what we call minority sports, funding is always a problem. So do you have an agent, or do people just find out about you and then want to get involved, or is it people who provide products for table tennis? How do you go about that particular aspect of it?
It's a lot of different, collaborative efforts. It can be sometimes people going through my agent. It can be word of mouth, as in, oh, Martin can do this event for you, or he can speak here, or he can provide table tennis and we can have lots of fun. It can be, as you said, table tennis providers that maybe want to offer kit or their products and things like that. And it's something that I've had to do from the very beginning. Being a minority sport, the funding isn't what it needs to be, and it is on the lower side. I think people often assume that when you're an elite athlete, that when you can say, oh, I'm a professional table tennis player, I'm a professional handball player, they assume football money. That's the common misconception with elite sport. As you say, I'm a professional athlete, and they straight away people go to, must be doing all right, must be doing it like a footballer, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Especially in a minority sport, it's incredibly difficult at times in order to raise funds, just not even to train, just to live sometimes, just to get by, just to put food on the table and then have a roof over your head. And that's often overlooked, but we do the sports we do because we simply love it. And to have that opportunity to be a professional athlete is so slim, and when you get that opportunity, you've got to run with it.
And you're very gifted as well, because I know I'm fortunate to know not a lot of athletes, but you're a very gifted communicator as well. You can hear it coming through now. And I had a great example of working with Martin on a project a year or so ago, where I was approached by a large billion-dollar marketing agency out of the States that were looking for a top Scottish sports person to speak at their event. And we talked to a number of different individuals, and I was able to get Martin introduced to them. And you won that gig because you were able to home in directly on the kind of messaging they wanted to do. And I wonder how does that come from the sport, or is that a natural thing you have, that kind of, because what they did was completely out of your comfort zone, large American company, and yet you were able to hone in very clearly on the kind of messaging that they wanted to receive.
Yeah, I think it comes a little bit from sport. It comes a little bit from early life. From the day I was born, people have always stared at me. They've always looked. They've always asked questions. And it's only me that's been able to answer those questions. And it was something that even my family, when someone would say, "Oh, why does he have no hands?" If I was old enough to speak for myself, my family would turn and say, "Well, ask him. Let him tell you the story. It's his life." And so that, looking back on it, that helped me so much. Being able to speak to people, being able to deal with the pressure of being looked at every day. It's something that we all get looked at every single day, but it's something that we don't notice.
Yeah.
But whereas when everyone looks at you every single day, you do notice it, and you have to be able to deal with that. You put that on an athlete, and it's not just your performance that's getting looked at. You're looking at the disability, you're looking at their mistakes, in particular, the way the world is at the moment, we look at people's mistakes. And, if you're not able to express what went wrong, then that's simply not good enough being an athlete. You have to get used to dealing with the media. You have to get used to, understanding that you're going to be criticized at every turn. Putting that into the context of speaking to businesses, I didn't realize until, after being introduced to yourself, that business and sport has so many crossovers. And I had no idea that was even possible, because to me, a business was all about making money and providing the service. An athlete was all about going out and winning and, trying to be successful. But actually, there's so much crossover there it speaks tremendous amounts that now businesses will look to athletes for inspiration, for motivation, to provide them with services, ultimately to produce better revenue and better, customer care, better in-house care, making sure that their staff are looked after, because they take the values and the ethos of sport and put it back into their company.
Wonderful. And it's that you've just given the perfect example of how to be a communicator. But I was laughing as well, because I can remember you got in touch with that US company when you were getting they'd got a chance to meet, and the feedback from Martin's talk, I have to tell you, was just spectacular. I think they wanted to take you home. But we did turn up in a kilt, of course, which helped. But you showed that nous as well, that when you were going out to New York for your honeymoon, that you actually contacted them and said, "Hey guys, I'm going to be in town," which to me is a natural thing to do. But I think that shows great gumption as well to do that.
I did. I just wanted to, keep in touch and say hello, and I actually still keep in touch with a few members of the staff, just because we hit it off, and as you said, I went out there for my honeymoon to New York. And I kept in touch, and I ended up coming away with pretty much floor-side seat tickets at Madison Square Garden to the NBA. And I was like,
that was a gift from them for you.
It was, as a honeymoon gift, and I was like, I just wanted to say hello, and that's the tremendous relationships that you're able to build, And again, that's an experience I wouldn't have had I been able-bodied and never played table tennis, because I would never had the chance to speak to a company like that. And to be rewarded in such a way, it's an event I'll never forget, that me and my wife got to share, and it was fantastic.
Just I share that particular story because I think it shows about the fact that in all aspects of life, it's one thing leads to another, that leads to another, that leads to another, and we're the only people that can stop the journey. So by continuing with that journey, you've ended up having different experiences and building these connections. But I think that deep down desire to win as well, we don't talk about it a lot in Scotland, because it seems to be a little bit about the taking part being the good bit, but the actual winning it's so inspirational for the rest of us. Like we're very fortunate at Scottish Business Network, which I chair. You're an advisor to us, and everyone's desire to see you succeed to get to those Paralympics is just overwhelming. We're all following you, and do you find a pressure in that when you build these collaborations with others, and then we all look to you to be a success? Does that add in a certain way a pressure to what you're doing?
It certainly does. It certainly does add a pressure, because you don't want to let anyone down. Nobody wants to let anyone down.
Yep.
But I've found that, the setbacks that I've had, when I've played in previous major championships, for example, and you've not quite reached the level that you wanted to, or, you lost a match that you feel you shouldn't have. And I remember going back to one of my first ever sort of bigger sponsors and saying, look, I'm really sorry, I messed up, I didn't succeed at this competition. And they were like, and did you try? Did you give it absolutely everything? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. Well, we don't care. And that was the sigh of relief. I was like, oh wow, I can fail. I'm allowed to fail, and that's okay. And I think that's often a misconception, is that we can never fail. We can never fail. But actually we have to, and we will, because there in life, and in business and in sport, there's always one winner, and we have to be allowed to fail, and we have to be okay with that. But of course, yeah, the pressure is there. I don't want to let sponsors down. I don't want to let family down, friends, teammates, just anyone. You don't want to let them down. Even the people on the street that see you and go, oh, good luck this weekend when you've got a competition. You're like, yeah, thanks very much. You don't want to let anyone down, but it happens. And, people are so supportive, though, regardless whether you win or whether you lose. As long as you give everything, that's where there's a sort of a line of respect drawn in the sand. Well, did you give everything you can? Did you do your utmost in order to prepare, to try? Then that's okay. And that was something that took me a while to realize, because, especially when I, lost a few matches in the beginning of my career, I was very sort of, I don't want to tell anyone. I don't want to tell anyone that I've lost, because what if they don't support me anymore? And actually posting your losses and showing the tough times, when you're not doing so good, you're not feeling so good, that actually brings out the best in people, because they get behind you even more. And it's not because they have to see you win. It's just because they want to. They want to see you do well, and that means so much more than you can put into words.
Well, I think we've got the snippet that we have to take out there to promote this video, because that was I think you helped so many people, Martin. You don't realise it, but by telling us how to deal with these particular challenges, it's just a pure inspiration. And that idea that, for minority sports, when they're working with sponsors, the sponsors want certain things, but any sponsor understands we can't guarantee the success. That's what we're trying to achieve. And the more support we can give you, the more chance there is of success. But also your ability to handle the pressure that comes with that is so important. So we're here today talking about sport, and obviously we're doing it with Scottish accents, so we'll focus on Scottish sport. And over the last 6 months, we've seen a revitalising of Scottish sport. We've seen football success, we've seen rugby success that we haven't seen for 20 or 30 years, which has bound us together. We're seeing success at golf as well. And when any young person watching this chat today, Martin, and you are fantastically well grounded at being the fact that they could be you. There is no reason why playing any sport in Scotland you can't be successful. Why do you think that is? What is it in Scotland that's because it's not that we don't have a fantastic fully funded table tennis support system here. So what is it in the sports that you've seen that sort of helps here in Scotland?
I think we have this natural camaraderie, that when one of us succeeds, we all succeed. in Scotland.
Yeah.
And I think sport really does highlight that. You know, as you said, whether it's the success in the recent football or the rugby or golf as well, it's something that when one of us succeeds, we all succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, people really want that for each other in Scotland. You know, we want to see people do well. We want to highlight what a wonderful nation that we have. You know, and I think that's something that you can't buy that, you know, and maybe it has something to do with the size of our nation. You know, we're relatively small in the grand scheme of things. And I think that adds to it, you know, because we're world renowned, yet such a small nation. And let's be honest, we love that status. We love that the world knows who Scotland is and what we're about. Albeit a lot of them only know us for the whiskey, but I'll take that for now. That's all right. You know, we'll conquer sport next, but it's something that when we succeed in Scotland, I think we're very good at highlighting it and making people feel good about themselves. You know, there is that unity within Scotland that, you know, as I said, when one person gets lifted up, we all do.
Wonderful. And for any young person watching this, so it's anyone who's watching this going, oh, I'm kind of trying this sport and I quite like it, but I'm not that good. And, you know, there's more popular things. So what was your words of encouragement to get them to keep going and keep trying, keep training?
For me, it's the way I look at it is the Paralympic Games is obviously my target. That's my goal. And the whole Olympic and Paralympic ethos is to bring people together, you know, unite nations together under one and have sport and have it a level playing field for all. The way that translates to me is that, okay, now sport in the Olympics and Paralympics is the pinnacle. But that doesn't mean that your local club isn't your pinnacle. You know, if you find something that you love, whether it be handball, table tennis, curling, if you love that sport, then make it your thing. You know, it doesn't mean you have to go on and be the best in the world. It doesn't even mean you have to be the best in your club, but it does give you the opportunity to be the best version of you. And to me, that is the Olympic and Paralympic ethos. You know, it's now turned into an elite sport, but you can have that elite attitude, that elite mentality where I'm going to be the best that I can be. And that's regardless of level, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's
not about being the best in the world. It's about being the best you. And the best you will always have a fantastic opportunity.
And it's so well put, Martin. And I think that idea about the best you, we can decide what it is.
Exactly.
You know, someone said to me about how do you deal with failure? I go, well, I'm fortunate in my life. I get to decide the rules. So it's pretty difficult to fail if I'm deciding on the rules. You know, things don't work out the way I want, but I got great value from those learning lessons or made these connections or did other things. But that kind of, you decided upon a target. A target was the Paralympics. And, you know, how's it felt the last year because of COVID, the date of the games slipping and then the games actually being in doubt? Because that's something completely out of your control. So how do you deal with something like that could stop you from attaining your dream?
Well, I won't lie. In the beginning, when it all sort of got shifted, so we were supposed to have qualification in May 2020, and that obviously got pulled from the calendar very early on. And for myself and the athletes around me that were in similar positions, I felt a bit sorry for myself. I'll be honest, I did, because I was like, but this was my opportunity to qualify. This was me going to try and go to the Paralympic Games, and that's been taken away from me. So I naturally felt a bit sorry for myself. Yeah. And, you know, I spoke to my teammates, I spoke to my coaching staff, the sports psychologist, and we all came together as a team. And we all suddenly changed our mindsets into, actually, if they're going to push this back one more year, we've all got 12, maybe more months to get better, to be stronger, to be fitter, to be just all round better at what we do. And okay, the rest of the world might have that opportunity, but we don't care about them. We're going to do us. Yeah. And that was something that, you know, we had that negative thought. We thought, well, this is rubbish. You know, we've been robbed here of an opportunity. But actually, we've now been given a massive opportunity to go and improve. And that's now where I see this opportunity in 7 weeks' time. You know, regardless if I qualify or if I don't, I'm a better player than I was 18 months ago when I should have had the opportunity to qualify. And that to me is just putting me in good stead for the future, regardless of the outcome, because I'm a better athlete. I know more about myself, because we've all had a lot of time to sit and think recently, haven't we? And it's something that, it's easy to get stuck in one mindset or the other. And, it's going back to what I said earlier, it's actually think a little bit bigger and realize, where those opportunities lie. So, for me to have this opportunity in 7 weeks' time, I'm in a much better position than what I would have been last year.
You said something very special to me there, Martin, which was you said you reached out to your support group. You talked to the others round about you, and together you all decided to find the positivity in the situation that had happened. And I'm an incredible believer in that. I think we have to react in a way to create the positivity around us, irrespective of whatever the circumstance is. And that's actually a skill that we develop through working with a support group round about us. I'm very lucky to have you as part of my support group. If I'm struggling a little bit, I can reach out to you or think of you even, and that's enough to spark me up. We just have to keep going. We have to overcome. So just so for anyone watching, when is the Paralympics currently scheduled for?
So it all kicks off on the 25th of August. So fingers crossed that it stays that way. We've been informed that it is going ahead. It's going to happen on that date. So we just have to plan accordingly.
Well, I, and I'm sure everyone watching this, Martin, wishes you every success. You have been an inspiration on the different subjects we've discussed. And I'm delighted to call you a friend and delighted you're here with us. Thank you very much, Martin Perry.
Thank you.